My fingers were removed one by one, but I heard her voice with each one. It started with a whisper in my left ear, just a breath of sound, the faintest coil of a voice curling down my spine. I remember sitting alone in my workshop, chisel in hand, smoothing the edge of a carved wooden marionette, the kind with ball-jointed limbs and the expressionless porcelain face I always thought was charming. But that night, something felt wrong. The puppet smile, molded days ago, seemed to widen on its own as the air around me dropped a few degrees colder. Then the voice came again, not a word, just a hum. I stood up so fast my chair tipped. My tools clattered to the floor. "Who's there?" I asked the room. Nothing but the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock and the creak of old beams settling. I should have left then, but I didn't. Instead, I went back to work. I always thought creating things could distract me from anything, from grief, from memories, from the emptiness of the house since Clara disappeared. We never found her body. They said she probably ran, maybe drowned, maybe got lost in the woods behind the old Bellwether estate. But I knew my sister. She was obsessed with the stories, the folklore, the hidden woman in the trees. So was I. That was the problem. 2 nights later, I felt the pain for the first time. I was asleep on the couch, scraps of unfinished dolls strewn around me, paint still drying on the heads. My hand throbbed. Not the kind of throb that comes from too much carving or sanding. A deep, dull pulse like something was growing beneath the skin. I sat up, pulled my hand to my face, and saw the blood. My index finger. It was gone. Cleanly gone. No wound, no torn skin, no jagged edge, just a stump as though it had never existed. The pain was sharp now, cutting into the bone like fire, and then I heard her. Clara. Her voice. Clear as glass. "It's okay, Elliot," she whispered, so softly it sounded like wind caught in a bottle. "She needs a part of you." One by one. I screamed. There was no one else in the house. The doors were locked. No signs of forced entry. Just me, my workbench, and the blood dripping from a finger that vanished into thin air. The hospital didn't believe me. Of course they didn't. I told them it was an accident. The surgeon said it looked surgically removed, sutured by something precise. But there was no cut, no trauma, just smooth skin where my finger used to be. The nightmare started that night. I saw Clara, standing barefoot in the woods. Her eyes were hollow, black sockets swimming with shadows. She was wearing her favorite yellow raincoat, the one she used to insist on even in the dead of summer. Behind her, towering trees twisted into the sky like hands reaching for help. And in the distance, the sound would creaking, like a swing, like a noose, like a puppet being hung. When I woke, my middle finger was gone. This time, there was no blood, no pain, just absence, like I had always been that way, like my body was being rewritten overnight. And the voice, hers, again. "She's building you again," Clara said, smiling through the dark. "She's almost here." I tried to stay awake the next night. I drank coffee until my stomach turned, paced the floor until my knees gave out. I thought if I just stayed conscious, I could stop it. I tied a knife to my wrist, one of my wood-carving blades, thinking I could defend myself if something came. But around 3:14 a.m., the ticking stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Every clock in the house. And then, breath. Not mine. A sound like someone exhaling against my skin. I couldn't move. Not sleep paralysis. This was something else. I was standing, but paralyzed, like my body had been puppeteered, frozen mid-movement. And behind me I saw her. Not Clara. The woman from the stories. The hollow seamstress. She had no face. Just a veil of black gauze that hung over empty space. Her fingers were needle-thin, white and translucent like old porcelain. Her hands were stitching something into the air, black thread, looping through nothing. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even breathe. She reached for me and touched my ring finger. I woke up screaming. The finger was gone. No pain, no blood, just smooth flesh. I burned all the dolls the next day. Every puppet, every wooden arm and tiny carved face, I tossed into the fire behind my shed. The smell of burning paint and hair, I used real strands, Clara's sometimes, nearly made me vomit. But it didn't matter. When I turned around, she was standing at the edge of the woods. Clara, still in that yellow coat. She raised her hand. 4 fingers. That night, I left the house and drove into town. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe a church. Maybe a police station. Maybe somewhere I could feel human again. I ended up in a motel off Route 9, the kind that smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke. I locked the door, shoved a dresser in front of it, and taped a kitchen knife to each of my hands. When I woke, both knives were gone, and so were my thumbs. That morning, I couldn't hold my phone. I couldn't tie my shoes. I barely managed to open the door with my elbow. But it didn't matter, because etched into the mirror, carved with something sharp, were the words, "She threads you from the inside." I didn't remember writing it. I ran, back to Bellwether Estate, back to the forest. If this thing wanted me, then maybe I could find it first. Maybe I could end it. Maybe if I found Clara's body, I could bury her, silence her, free her. I packed what little I could. Voice recorder, flashlight, spare batteries. I had no hands now, just stumps, dull and numb. But I managed to tape the recorder to my jacket. I pressed record, just in case I didn't come back. Just in case someone needed to hear what I saw. It took hours to find the clearing. The trees felt wrong, like they moved when I looked away. The air was damp, full of the scent of rot and wet moss. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the creak again. Then I saw her, the seamstress, standing at the foot of a giant marionette cross. Strings dangled down into dirt, buried deep. On the cross hung a puppet. No, a body, my own face staring back at me, wooden and still, eyes glassy and wide. And Clara, at the base of the cross, pulling the strings. She turned and smiled. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then, like a memory flooding back, I remember the nursery rhyme, the one she used to sing. First the pointer, next the ring, then the thumb for whispering. Middle goes without a sound. Pinky last and underground. I fell to my knees. My arms no longer responded. The stumps began to ache, throb, burn. And then she emerged. The seamstress pulled a needle from her mouth, threaded it through my chest. I felt a puncture, the cold metal sliding through skin and bone. But I couldn't scream, couldn't move. She was sewing me to something, to her world, maybe to the other side, to the mirror of my body hanging above. And each time the needle pierced, I heard Clara's voice. Don't be scared. It's almost over. Don't fight it. She loves you. She needs you. Only one left. I opened my mouth to beg, to plead, but all that came out was dust. My voice had been taken, stitched away like everything else. And then the pinky. Gone. I collapsed into myself. My body folded inward, like a marionette without strings. But my mind didn't stop. I was still aware, still here. And above me, the wooden version of myself opened its mouth and screamed. I woke up on the floor of my workshop. Hands gone, arms numb. But across the room, the doll stood upright. My face, my eyes, my smile, and behind it, Clara, still in yellow. She leaned close, whispered into my ear. She finished you. But finish didn't mean death. I wish it had. It meant something worse, being worn. The next morning, I wasn't in my workshop anymore. I was in a room with no walls, or at least none I could see. Just darkness beyond a faint white circle of light. I was sitting in a wooden chair, but I couldn't feel it. My body wasn't mine. When I looked down, I saw the marionette. My marionette, wood, polished and waxy. The joints were visible at my knees, elbows, neck. I tried to move, and I did, but not by will. Something pulled the string on my arm, and it lifted. My mouth opened, and I heard a sound. A whisper. Not mine. "Say it again," the voice said. The seamstress. Invisible. Present. Felt. She guided every word. "Say it again, puppet." And I spoke. Unwilling. Voice dragging like a needle through old fabric. "She is coming through the stitch. I am only the skin." Then laughter. Soft, childlike. Clara's voice just out of sight. "Good boy," she said. My head twisted. Again, not by my own effort, and faced a wall that hadn't been there before. It pulsed like muscle. And sewn into it, mouth stitched shut with red thread, was another puppet. But not me. It looked like Clara. The real Clara. Eyes glassy. Crying without sound. She hadn't disappeared. She had been taken. The woman in the forest. She didn't kill Clara. She wore her. And now she was wearing me. That's what she did. That's what she always did. The hollow seamstress didn't destroy bodies. She hollowed them, cleaned them out like cloth dolls, and slipped herself inside. She used grief like a needle and sorrow like thread. You mourn the one you lost. And she stitched herself in place of the person they had been. No one noticed. Not at first, because she remembered enough to pass. She sounded like them. She moved like them. She spoke with their voice. And all the while, the real soul was screaming from behind the seams. I tried to cry. Nothing. My face was carved wood. Emotions were a suggestion. "She's going to take you to the next one now," Clara said from behind the wall of stitched faces. "You're ready." What does that mean? I tried to say, but I couldn't speak anymore. She had taken my tongue now. When she stepped out, the seamstress, I saw her new form. My form. She looked exactly like me. Even had the limp from when I broke my ankle as a teen. Even had the scar behind my ear. She had practiced. She had prepared. And now she walked into the world of my body, smiling the way I smiled, making tea the way I made tea, holding tools the way I once held them, before she took my fingers, before she made me her echo. And deep inside me, I felt the pull, not of strings, of others. There were more of us, sewn together, soul to soul, a patchwork quilt of hollow people. I could feel them now. A woman who once ran a small-town bakery, now just a voice buried under the skin of the seamstress. A young boy who cried for his mother every night in the dark of her ribcage. A man whose last words were stitched into the lining of her coat, repeated in his own voice every full moon. And now me. We were puppets not for show, but for memory, to remember what it felt like to be human. She needed us, because she wasn't anything without us. She couldn't laugh, couldn't cry, couldn't feel. So she took us, wore us, used us to feel the world through stolen flesh and borrowed hearts. And worst of all, no one could tell. When the seamstress returned to my home, to my life, no one blinked. She waved to the neighbor, walked the same routes, even called my old boss and quit, claiming I wanted to retire into quiet things. No one asked questions. No one saw the dull glaze in her eyes. But inside I screamed. I screamed every day, until the pain of silence replaced my voice. But one day, something changed. The others whispered, the ones buried inside her. We had no fingers, no hands, no mouths. But we had time. We listened, and we heard things she did not. Cracks forming in the seams. Places where the stitches loosened. Names she forgot to erase. Memories she didn't understand. That was a trick. She could wear us, but she could never be us. And we waited for the moment she made a mistake. It came when she visited the mirror. The old one. The one from our grandmother's attic. The one Clara and I used to play with as kids. We always thought it was strange. It never showed the full reflection. Something was always missing. It was a soul mirror, a relic, and when the seamstress stood before it, something blinked in her reflection. Not the eyes, not the face, The inside. It showed us, all of us, dozens of faces, screaming in the folds of her flesh. And in that instant, she saw herself. Not the stolen body, not the perfect facade. The hollow thing she was, the seamless nothingness. And she shrieked. The mirror shattered. And in that moment, we pulled. All of us. From inside. We yanked on the threads she used to bind us. Tugged and twisted and clawed at the stitching with our formless thoughts. The pain was unbearable. It wasn't physical. It was memory pain. The ache of losing who you were. The sorrow of every moment stolen. We ripped at the seams. She stumbled. She cracked. Her limbs spasmed. And in the real world, in my house, she fell, hit the floor hard, and I saw, just for a second, a gap in the seam at her throat. A glimpse of light. My light. I pushed through, screamed every name she ever wore. And for the first time, I moved. Not as a puppet, not as a husk, as me. I stood inside the darkness, inside her, and opened my stitched mouth. Blood poured out, but so did a word. Elliot. Clara's voice. My real sister. She had found me, and we pulled together. The skin she wore split down the center like a rotten doll, and from the cavity we poured out the souls of forgotten, the puppets reclaimed. I don't know what happened to her after that. Maybe she fled. Maybe she collapsed into dust. But I woke up on the forest floor, gasping, cold, hands bandaged, my real hands scarred, burned, but there. I walked home. Every step was a battle. My bones ached like they had been reassembled. When I opened the door, Clara was there. Real Clara. We didn't speak. We just sat in the silence and listened to the ticking of the clock. Only now, I don't carve dolls anymore. I bury them, one by one, because some stitches never truly come undone. And late at night, when I close my eyes, I still hear her voice, whispering my name through the seam. But peace is a trick, a low, a breath before the needle returns. The weeks after I came back were fog. Clara stayed with me in the house. Neither of us could sleep well, not for long. I kept expecting to wake up without a part of myself again. Every morning, I checked my fingers, counted them. 5, 5, 5, still there. But I didn't trust it. Neither did Clara. She would flinch when I turned too quickly, watch my mouth when I spoke, as if waiting to see whether it moved the right way. Once, I caught her whispering something behind a closed door, a rhyme, the one from the nursery. Pointer, ring, then the thumb. I opened the door quietly. She wasn't praying. She was saying goodbye. To me. Because a part of her wasn't sure if I was really Elliot anymore. A part of me wasn't sure either. There were still splinters. Not under the skin. In the soul. Moments where I'd blink and feel the strings tug. Like muscle memory from a body that was never mine. Moments where I'd see something out the corner of my eye. A flicker, a shape, thread, drifting in the air like spider silk. Moments when my hands moved before I told them to. One night, I found myself standing in the workshop again. I hadn't walked there. I had awoken there. In front of the burned-out remains of my puppets. The ones I thought I destroyed. But one of them was whole now. Sitting on the bench. Waiting. It looked like Clara. But wrong. The eyes were too wide. The mouth slightly parted like it was listening. I leaned closer. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Grief. But as I did, I saw something in the doll's chest, just behind the wooden ribs. A tangle of red thread. It pulsed. Slowly, as if breathing. And I heard it. The seamstress's whisper. You never left. I only let you think you did. I screamed and smashed the puppet with a hammer until it cracked apart. But the next night it was back. Not just back, it was moved. Sitting on the windowsill. Head tilted. Fingers interlaced in its lap. I didn't tell Clara. I couldn't. Because maybe she wasn't Clara either. That's the sickness of the seamstress. The infection. It spreads through doubt, through memory, through grief. You lose someone and you miss them so badly that when they return, you don't ask questions. You accept the smile that's slightly wrong, the hug that feels colder than it should, the laugh that never quite reaches the eyes. Because believing they're back hurts less than knowing they never will be. The seamstress feeds on that. She wears comfort, and inside her we all rot. One night, the dreams returned, the worst ones yet. I was sitting in a chair, my hand stitched to the armrest with black thread. Across from me, a faceless figure sewed a needle through my throat. Every time it passed, it pulled out a memory. My first kiss, the night Clara and I built a snowman in the middle of the road, the sound of my mother singing in the kitchen. Each memory turned to thread, and each thread she stitched into another puppet. When I awoke, I couldn't remember my birthday, or Clara's. I opened a drawer with shaking fingers and found a folder marked family photos. I stared at the images. I was in them, smiling, alive, real, but I didn't recognize my own face. The seamstress hadn't left me. She was still unraveling me from the inside out. And the worst part, she wasn't trying to kill me. She was remaking me, softer, more hollow, more pliable, so I could be used again. Clara came in that morning and saw me staring at the photos. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me, took my hand. Her fingers were cold. I turned slowly and looked her in the eye, and for a moment, just a flicker, they weren't hers. The pupils were stitches, spinning, coiling inward. She blinked, and they were normal again. "I missed you," she said, but the way she said it wasn't Clara. Not really. She was slipping too. The seamstress had sewn her memory into Clara's skin, or maybe she had sewn Clara into hers. Either way, I wasn't alone. We were both puppets now, hollowed, shared, inhabited, and every day more the thread unravels. I can't tell you what's real anymore, not with certainty. Sometimes I wake up and feel like I'm back in the dark room, the one with the spotlight. Sometimes I see other puppets around me, on the street, on the bus, behind counters at shops. Their faces too smooth, their movements a half-second late. The seamstress has grown bold. She's spreading, through sorrow, through grief, through dolls and photos and memories we thought were safe. This is a part of the story no one wants to hear. I don't think there's a way back. Not really. Once she threads herself into your soul, the holes never close. You might feel normal for a while. You might laugh again, hold hands, kiss, dance in the kitchen. But every time you do, there's that quiet pull, that faint tug at the edge of your smile, a tension in your fingers, a voice behind your thoughts. And sometimes you'll open a drawer and find a needle you never bought, or a thread you never owned, or a puppet that looks just like you, sitting, waiting, smiling, because she's always sewing, and she's never finished. Not until you are. Last night, I found a needle under my pillow. It wasn't mine. It was long, silver, and old, the kind of hand-forged needle you'd see in a museum, slightly curved at the tip, dull with age but sharp enough to know it still remembered what flesh felt like. Wrapped around it was a thin strand of red thread, tied at the end like a noose. I didn't scream. I just stared, and from the hall, I heard Clara humming. The lullaby. Again, the one with the counting. She never used to sing aloud. She said it scared her. Said she always thought it would summon something. Now it was her favorite tune. And every time I heard it, something inside my chest twitched. A phantom pull. I walked toward the sound and found her sitting in the living room, sewing a patch into her coat. A coat with no tears. A patch that didn't belong. "Where did you get that needle?" I asked. She didn't look up. She didn't even blink. Just kept threading the needle through nothing. It passed through the fabric and into her skin, and she didn't flinch. "Clara," I whispered, "what are you doing?" She smiled. but her eyes were gone. 2 black buttonholes. Hollow. Empty. I'm making you again, she said. Then she pushed the needle toward me. I ran. Out the door. Into the night. Barefoot. No jacket. Didn't care. I needed to find something. Anything. Proof I was still me. Proof she was still her. But what I found was worse. Because when I reached the town square, nothing was moving. Everything was still. The cars, the people, the birds and sky, frozen, as if the world had been paused. Then I saw the strings, dozens of them, thin and black, reaching down from clouds, attached to wrists, to elbows, to necks. All the people I knew, puppet, held up by invisible hands. Eyes wide, heads tilted, slack-jawed, and in the center of the square, a mirror, huge, framed in bone. Its surface rippled like water, and in the reflection I didn't see myself. I saw her, the seamstress, standing behind me, her fingers inside my back, like I was a coat she was slipping into. I turned. No one was there, but the sensation remained. Fingers pressing into me. I stumbled backward, hit the base of the mirror. It rippled again, and this time the reflection wasn't just me. It was every version of me she'd made. Dozens, some with stitched mouths, some with hollow eyes, some with needles jammed through their spines. And they were all smiling, waiting, because she doesn't just take one version of you. She makes many. She keeps the part she likes, rips out the rest. You're not a person to her. You're material. I backed away, shaking. The sky above pulsed like fabric being pulled too tight. And then it tore, and out came her fingers, miles long, threaded through the clouds, the streets, the buildings, pulling everything tighter. Closer, wronger. I saw a little boy fall from a swing, but the thread held him up, lifted him like a doll, bent his legs backward, and then made him smile. I screamed. No one else did, because they were all hers now. I ran again. Didn't stop until I was back home, but the house was gone. In its place, the workshop, restored, rebuilt, like it had never burned. The smell of sawdust, the quiet tick of the clock, and on the bench, another puppet, still wet with paint. It looked like me, but older, hollow. Behind me, the seamstress whispered, "You've been here the whole time." I turned, shaking. "I'm not yours," I said. "You always were." She reached into my chest with her thread-thin fingers and pulled, but this time I grabbed back. I don't know how, but I did. Felt the thread between a stretch, strain, tremble, and in that moment I saw everything. Every soul she ever wore, every body she ever carved, children, parents, lovers, all stitched into her. Still alive, still feeling it. I pulled harder, and the thread snapped. She screamed, not out loud, but through me, a scream of torn fabric, of unraveling thought, and she collapsed, not dead, not gone, but limp, empty, and the thread, it lay between us, still twitching, still alive. I could use it. I knew that. I could wear her now, put her inside me. But then what would I become? What would I sew? I stepped away, left the puppet on the bench, left the thread on the floor. I walked outside. The sky was blue again, the air still, but I don't trust it, not anymore, because somewhere the needle waits. The seamstress will rise again. She always does, and the next time, she might start with the toes,